Welcome to Chatting with the Experts. This is a podcast for immigrant women or immigrant women's children from Africa and from the Caribbean. And these adventurous women have relocated or would have relocated to the UK or to the US or Canada or even Australia from their native countries. In this podcast, we talk about some of the struggles that we may have encountered. And I say we because even though we're first generation or second generation, an immigrant's influence is always reflected in their family, in their lives, in everything that they do or we do. So we will share resources and we'll also talk about our experiences so that our fellow sisters can benefit from this. So today, my guest is an amazing woman. I would say she's a fellow African, but actually she was born here. So she's a first generation sister American with African parents. Her name is Carol Ben-Davies, and she lives and works in Indiana. With that, I want to say welcome to Chatting with the Experts. And Carol, I can't say too much about you because there's so much to say about you. So tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just so excited to be talking with you, to be sharing my experience. I'm a very proud first generation American. My parents are from Sierra Leone, West Africa, and I was born in Brooklyn, New York. And I am a mother of two kids, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. And I think often about how my parents came here at such a young age, didn't have family. Their mothers were back home, their siblings were back home. They were the first of their siblings to come here to the States. And I think often about, man, how difficult was that to have young kids and just to be living in a country that's not your own. My mom always talks about how America was sweet when she came here. She said Freetown was sweet and America was sweet. And so being a first generation American has really influenced so much of my life. It gave me a foundation for the love of education that I have. My dad and mom always talked about school and schooling. And I think that might have influenced my career path where I worked for over 20 years in higher education. I actually have leveraged that experience to start my own business called College Bound Determination, where I help parents of college bound kids to prepare for the realities of college. And we'll get a little bit into that. That's sort of, who I am. I'm the oldest, so I think that's very significant.
It is.
In an African family, I'm the oldest of three girls. My sister and I are, my middle sister and I are 4 years apart, and then my baby sister and I are 9, sometimes 10 years apart. Her birthday is December 31st, so it kind of depends. But, just being a big sister has also been such a impactful part of my life, especially for my baby sister, where she says I'm more her mom. And I'm just like, no. And my mom says that I helped raise her. And I do remember helping her with potty training and things like that. But, I feel it's always given me a level of responsibility to be a good example for my sisters and to, you're always striving to make your parents proud. I think that's a very African notion. I know other cultures have it, but I feel it very strongly as an African American. That the drive to make your parents proud, to really live up to the sacrifices that they made. I am constantly thinking about, what are they going to say? Even in this interview, I'm like, oh, I know they're going to listen to it. I hope I make them proud. It's just something I am always thinking about.
I know you will make them proud, not just in this interview, but you have made them proud. But as you said, being the oldest,
Yeah,
African parents, and of course, being there was a lot of spoken and unspoken expectations put upon you, correct?
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I noticed that you did your undergraduate degree in UNC Chapel Hill.
I surely
Woohoo!
did. I surely did. I am a very proud Tar Heel. So proud, in fact. I went to school there, graduated in 4 years. The day after I graduated from college, I was working on campus. I was working in the
Wow.
Black Cultural Center there.
Wow.
From there, I went on to work in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. So, and then I went off to graduate school in Chicago, at Loyola University in Chicago.
Amazing. And you said you worked the day after graduating, you
Mhm.
started working on campus in admissions. That is probably what influenced you to go into the career and the business that you now have.
Absolutely. And actually was working at the Black Cultural Center. I was working
Mhm.
at the Black Cultural Center there. And when I was in that position, someone was doing their practicum from Bowling Green University. And she said, "Hey, Carol, do you know that, what you're doing is an actual field? You can go to even graduate school to learn how to work in universities." And they have been doing their practicum in the office of the dean of students. And I said, "Oh, no, really? Wow, that sounds fascinating." Because I loved working on campus. I had been involved as a work study student in the Black Cultural Center, in another office on campus, been involved in our football program, helping with the recruits and the secretaries and doing some of their helping with some administrative work and helping with families when they come and tour the campus. So I fell in love with just a lot of the different aspects of higher education, not knowing that there was a field for it. And I did go on to the admissions office. And then I had always said I wanted to get my master's. And I had a wonderful supervisor, Herb Davis, who is still part of my life. My birthday was this past Sunday, and he calls me. He calls me every year, just checking on me, how I'm doing, checking on my family. I've had amazing mentors throughout my life. And so, yes, definitely working, being inspired by administrators on Carolina's campus did inspire me to look into, wow, is this really a career? Can I really spend my life working on college campuses? And the answer was yes. I worked on four different campuses: large, small, medium, public, and private, in a lot of different areas in higher ed. So, working with student activities, working with leadership, diversity and inclusion, fraternity and sorority life, student advocacy and support. And then I had an opportunity to be a director for diversity and inclusion in one of our colleges at the university, where I spent a good number of my professional career, Purdue University. I worked there for 13 years, where I was an assistant dean of students. So I just have a very, I say it's the breadth and depth of the collegiate experience. I know how to help kids get into college, and I know how to help them stay and be successful. I know the ups and I know the downs. And through my business, what I really try to do is help students have more ups than downs, more breakthroughs than breakdowns, because I saw so many of the breakdowns. And that's what inspired me to start my business, because there's so much conversation about preparing for college. And if you even go out and Google preparing for college, you'll find information about college admissions, financial aid, and scholarships. There's little conversation about what happens when students get to campus. What's the mindset? What are the habits? What are the things that they need to do to be successful when they get there? What are the obstacles that can be anticipated that students can navigate around and through? And so, really, through my business, it's really comprehensive, in trying to help students and parents. I help guide parents, but to help students be successful, to help them understand, what does it really take? What does it mean? What's the responsibility of being a college student?
I love that. I love that, especially because, when we think most times of, college, you find a lot of parents are more focused on getting their kids into college than actually thinking about, okay, now they are in college, how do we make sure that they succeed while in
Hmm.
college? And that's something you just touched on, that,
Hmm.
it's important to focus on their mindsets. What are the expectations? What would
Hmm.
college life be like? Because it's so different.
It's
I,
so different.
yeah. So let's talk a bit about that. What do you think that your the fact that you're first generation American kind of influenced you into thinking, of all different aspects of the students when they get to college? Because we did say a few minutes ago that being the firstborn child of an African parents living in the United States, there were lots of expectations put on you. And
Hmm.
that I know is a cultural thing. So
Yeah.
could you tell me a bit about that?
And I think what is so amazing, what I love about college is the self-discovery.
Hmm.
So I mentioned that I was born in Brooklyn. I moved to New Jersey when I was 13. No, I was moved to New Jersey when I was 10. And then I moved to North Carolina when I was 13. And the town that we moved to in North Carolina was very small. So I had had this very diverse experience of being with kids who were first generation American themselves, from Jamaica, for instance, from Africa, from China, just a very diverse upbringing growing up in Brooklyn, to New Jersey as well, to moving to this very small town in Weldon, North Carolina. Weldon was so small, people from North Carolina didn't know where it was.
I didn't. I don't. I'm learning about it today. And I lived in North Carolina for 26 years.
Oh goodness. Yes, it's a very small town, northeast part of the state. 30 miles from Rocky Mount was what I would always have to say to explain to people
Okay.
where it was in proximity to a place they knew.
Hmm.
And so when you go off to college, when you have an opportunity to learn more about yourself than you did maybe when you're in high school, when you're off on your own trying to establish your identity, I think it's very similar whether you're a first generation American or not, that experience. And so I thought about that in working with students often. I thought about those first borns whose parents, and I always joke with my mom that I was the experimental child. You don't know what you're doing as a parent, and I get it now. You don't know what you oh yeah now, oh my goodness. We'll talk about that too, but being a
Hmm.
parent really also impacted my life. That's really why I was inspired to start my business, because I had always talked about these parents and these helicopter parents, and oh my gosh. And then I had my own child and I said, "Oh, I'm so sorry." But going off to college, it really gives you an amazing opportunity to learn more about yourself. And I cannot say that I fully embraced being African when I was growing up in North Carolina. We were the only Africans. It was like white people, black folks, and then my family. I didn't have a lot of people who I could resonate with, who understood what it was like to, be a first generation. And I had a lot of shame, I would have to say, around being African. There was a lot of teasing in school, and I didn't want to share that part of my identity with my classmates. It was so different when I went off to college, when I went to Carolina, because they were, blacks like me that were African and American. So that term African American has a dual meaning for me, because I am African, but I was born in America. But they're African Americans whose families have been here for centuries. And so you see me on face appearance and you assume that I'm black. And yes, I am. But there is a lived experience that I didn't have. And it made me question my blackness. And it wasn't until I got around other students who had similar upbringings to me, and I joined the African Student Association. They changed the name to Oasis, and I cannot remember what it means right now,
Hmm.
but it was just an embracing of other students who were born in Africa or whose parents were born in Africa and they were first gen. And we were in this space together, learning and growing, being a student, trying to figure life out, that I really started to embrace my identity. And I think we forget that aspect of college life. We think
Yes.
solely about the academic piece, we think a lot about the social aspects, but the learning and growing that you do is so profound. And I learned about that in graduate school in terms of student development theory, and how that impacts all the students that come to a college campus. So long long answer short, being a first gen American, and thinking about the identity piece, the identity crisis that can often happen, I related it to a lot of other areas where identity was challenged. For instance, a student who has been earning all A's since kindergarten, and their identity is that of a scholar, who's earning all A's, an honors student whose parents has a bumper sticker on the back of their car. They suddenly go to college and they're not making all A's anymore. They're failing, and they start to wonder and question, who am I?
Yeah.
That identity crisis kind of comes into play, where you have to learn to figure out for yourself who you are outside of what the out external appearances may be. So I really, there's a lot of conversation about whether college is important, whether college is necessary, whether you can be successful, without going to college. And I definitely, I am one who doesn't feel that everyone needs to go to college. You need to do something after the high school. You need to go to trade school, get a certificate or something. But there is something to be said about the collegiate environment, where a young person between the ages of 18 and 22 and older, for those who are in graduate school, where you're with other students who are going through this sort of shared experience of being on your own, making friends with people who you might have not had an opportunity to make friends with, when you're in high school. A lot of people come from very sheltered backgrounds,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're meeting people who have different thought processes than you. They worship differently than you. They
Mm-hmm.
think differently than you.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to be in an environment where you're interacting with these individuals in such a safe space, there's nothing like it. There's no replica of it, you know. And I am such an advocate for college, for the collegiate experience.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way to do it. And I think for so many individuals, they went to college, didn't know why they were there, changed their major several times, graduated with a degree that they don't use, and they feel very disenchanted about their collegiate experience. And they're on that bandwagon of college is a waste of time, college is a waste of money. But I believe that those individuals who did college and took full advantage of the opportunities that were there, they have a different narrative about their collegiate experience. And I want more of them to have that kind of transformational experience when they go off to college.
So I love what you're saying. And I love the fact that you talked about both ends because I asked you the question. So the emphasis most times for young people in high school is you got to get into college. But listening to you talk and hearing, I mean, what you're saying about, the collegiate experience is important. Is that something that you're able to convey to parents? And is that something, I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, wow, is that something you address from both ends? Yes, not all children are meant to go to college, but at the same time, if you do go to college, these are some of the things that you need to be aware of. Because I ask this for two reasons. One, the fact that you're first generation American. And I know how African parents have that reputation for you are going to college and you must succeed, you know? And the thing is, most African countries were colonized by Britain. So you have that kind of British mentality where you go to university and you do one, if you go in and say, I'm going to be studying, let's say, physics, they expect you to go in saying, I'm doing physics, and you need to graduate in physics.
Mhm.
Whereas the American first system, tertiary educational system here is so different. I had to learn it because, as you can see, I wasn't born here, where,
Mhm.
college can be looked at as a place to learn about yourself,
Mhm.
kind of discovering what it is to be a young adult. Because for the
Mhm.
African parents, like, am I paying for you? Or is that why you're going to go to college? You could learn that at home,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
So I like your perspective. I like the fact that you're first generation, and I like the fact that your business is focused on both sides, the parent and the student. So do you educate? This is a very long question, and I hope you get the
Yeah,
gist.
yeah,
Do you
yeah.
educate them on both ends?
I attempt to. I spend a lot of time. I actually am a moderator for an amazing Facebook group
Mm-hmm.
called Parents of Black and Brown and College Bound. It's
Mm,
close to 7,000 plus families in the group. And it's my goal to show the diversity of the collegiate experience, to show and talk about the entire college journey. And it's
love
so
that.
funny because yesterday I had a post where I said, "Hey, I'm just waiting for the time when I can talk real about this process you thought was overwhelming, but it's so much more. Don't take your foot off the brake, thinking that, now that they've got accepted that the journey is over." Because what I know is first year students often struggle with that transition from high school to college.
Mm-hmm.
But I have another moderator who was just like, "Oh, Carol, give them time to celebrate all these places they've been accepted to." And these kids have been accepted to some of the best universities in the country. It is such a beautiful thing to see. I had to share that while many of us think about college and think about the prospective students, those who are going and touring and thinking about applying to college,
Mm-hmm.
and those students who've been accepted to college,
Mm-hmm.
that they're actually college freshmen, college sophomores, college juniors, college seniors, those students who are doing a Victory Lap 1, Victory Lap 2, graduate school. And these people who haven't even been on a college campus yet predominate the whole conversation about college. And so what I try to do is show that it's not the end. It's just the beginning. And I try to share because my experience was very diverse. I got to work with some of the best students at some of the best universities on the country. And I see how the image of the college experience, going to football games, basketball games, the fun aspects of things, yes, the camp, the classes, and all of that, but there's this image and this vision that you have in your head when you think about college. And for many students, what they expect and what their reality is very different. There's a big disconnect. There's a huge gap because no one tells them about, "Oh, I'm going to have to live with somebody in my dorm who I don't know, and there's going to be roommate conflicts." No one talks about what a student might feel being away from home for the first
Mm-hmm.
time. I got an opportunity. My last institution was the second largest international student population in the country. Large number of students from all over the world. These students were far away from home. They were homesick, but so were the students who lived just right down the road. We don't
Mm-hmm.
talk about what being homesick does for
Mm-hmm.
someone.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about that identity crisis of the academic piece, the rigor that's different. So there's so much conversation that is just missing. When we think about college, you think about, I'm on social media quite a bit. We see all this, excitement over where students have gotten accepted. And then we
Mm-hmm.
see when they graduated. What is that middle piece? What is that meat of the collegiate experience? And very rarely are we hearing those conversations. And when we hear it, it's often very glowing. It's the students who are the student body presidents. They're the president of these organizations. They're, doing all these amazing community service. It's all very exciting and fun, right? But I unfortunately had an opportunity to work on the side of campus that people don't talk about. And what was so impactful about this was I had two different positions on the same campus and felt like what happened, where I had been doing all these leadership programs, planning events for students to learn about themselves, personal development, leadership development, planning activities, supporting diversity and inclusion initiatives. I did not know that on the other side of the same floor that I had been working on were students who were really having challenges academically, socially, emotionally, financially, spiritually, physically. I also had a chance to serve on a 24-hour on call team. So I would get calls at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning if there was an incident that happened that impacted a student.
Mm-hmm.
People don't see that. They don't know that, you know? So you think, oh, I want my child to go as far away as possible, 7, 8 hours. Well, if you get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning that your child is in the hospital,
What do you
what
do?
do you do? And you don't even think, oh, wow, I should have something in place if that happens, because you don't think that that's going to happen. You don't anticipate a phone call that your
Yeah.
child is in the hospital, your
Yeah.
child is sick, your
Yeah.
child has unfortunately passed away,
Yes. Yes. That's a
you
big
know?
thing.
So big. And so
Yeah.
I feel sometimes that I'm too much of a doom and gloom when it comes to the collegiate experience, but I want there to be more balance in the
Yeah.
conversation. I want parents and students to be more aware of what could happen. You
Yeah.
know, it's like when you're getting married, you expect everything to be amazing and wonderful, and you're planning for your wedding, and that takes so much of part of the conversation, right? Many people plan more for the wedding than they do for their marriage,
Yep.
right?
That's another topic.
That's another topic, but I see the correlation because at
Yeah.
the same time that I was getting married myself was when I moved over to this other area of the dean of students office. So I saw the
Okay.
correlation of this excitement of plan your wedding, it's going to be beautiful, it's all about you, it's your day, and the conversation that wasn't happening about how are we as husband and wife going to be a couple, blending two as one, being on the
Yes.
same page.
Yeah.
And if you just focus on the beautiful external stuff without understanding that there's going to be some compromise, there's going to be some difficulty. If you don't know that, when you experience it, you start to wonder, whoa, wait a minute, no one told me, I didn't expect this. Or you think
Absolutely.
that's them, that's their problem. Those people are the ones that can't keep their marriages together. I'm going to
That's
be different, until you get into your situation, you realize, oh my goodness, you know and so
yeah.
while I try to share, many times I get a lot of pushback, like, oh, that's nice, but that's not going to happen to my kid. My kid went to a very strong high school that prepared them for college. They had this SAT score, they have this GPA, they're going to be fine. And I
Yeah.
pray to God, that that's the case. But
Yeah.
the reality is, for too many students, that's not. And
I
I had a
love.
lot of conversations with parents and students about how, again, when I mentioned that what they expected was not what their reality was.
I
And
love
I
that.
believe if you at least know it could happen, you could plan to avoid it.
I love that. And I love that you're addressing that because that is the reality. That is, as you said, that's the hidden side of college, of
Hmm.
the college experience that no one talks about.
Hmm.
So, what would you say to parents of, let's start with, because we're talking about immigrants, parents of first generation Americans, or what, let me say this, children
Hmm.
whose parents are immigrants, who typically have, as I said earlier on, most of us immigrants came from British-based educational systems in our home countries. What advice would you give to them?
From my experience, working with students from the diaspora, right? There are very high expectations.
Mm-hmm.
These parents have sacrificed so much. They didn't come here and struggle for their child to be working at McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
That is
Mm-hmm.
not the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say to parents and students alike that there are more professions and careers than doctor, lawyer, engineer. We have to broaden our thoughts around what is a successful career. We have to look at what the strengths are of our child.
Mm-hmm.
My mom is a retired nurse, and she, there's a lot of nurses in the diaspora, right?
Mm-hmm.
She was like, "Oh, Kara, I think you should be a nurse. You're just so kind-hearted." One, I would cry if any doctor and patient were in my presence and they had bad news. Two, I don't like the sciences and the math. So while that might be a great profession, is that a great profession for me?
Right.
right? Is being a doctor the right profession for me? Was being a lawyer or engineer the right profession for me? They're great professions, but is that the right one for your child, right?
Important.
Also, the high expectation of success, expanding that so that that is not so limited. I think for many students that I've worked with, and for myself, it's like an A is the expectation, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
I will say that that can really come at a cost. And it's really great to have students have a balance, because if you have a child and they have all A's, but their mental health it comes at the expense of their mental health, are all those A's worth it?
Absolutely. I agree. I agree.
You know,
And
so
then, no, finish what you said.
yeah, just redefining what success looks like, expanding the different career paths and choices, supporting your child, being open. I know that there's a culture of being respectful and not talking back, but giving them an opportunity to practice positive discord in the home,
Absolutely.
learning how to advocate for themselves in the home. It will do wonders for them when they leave the home and have to do this on their by themselves. Because if you don't give them that practice, they have a difficult time doing it when they're by themselves.
That
And
is
and
so
and,
true.
and you have to strike the balance of, yes, I'm trying to be respectful, yes, but I also want to advocate for myself. I don't think this is the right path for me. I think this is the right path for me, you know, and being okay with that and respecting their autonomy as an adult.
Yes.
It's a big balance, and that's a whole nother conversation we can
I
have.
was
But
about to say a whole nother conversation. And then another question I have for you now is again to the children who are to the international students.
mhm.
So incoming students from different parts of the world, what would you say to them for the expectation on, college life in America?
Well, one of the things I noticed for a lot of our international students is the tendency to just connect with other people from your country,
Hmm.
and people who look like you, who eat your foods, and that's important. I loved when I had a classmate who knew what cassava leaves was, and
Hmm.
actually cooked it in her dorm room. And I would go, and she had a rice pot, and we would have some food. That's wonderful. But also branching out and connecting and really taking advantage of learning about other people and other cultures. That's important. I don't think we do that enough. We all, Americans alike, stay in our comfort zone. But what I always wanted to challenge students is to really take full advantage of the people, and the experiences that you can gain. Um, One of the greatest opportunities I had was just learning more about Lunar New Year, you know, and what that was to Asian culture countries,
Hmm.
not calling it Chinese New Year. I didn't understand that that was offensive to those countries that celebrated Lunar New Year but weren't from China. Just
Right.
different things like that.
And
And giving yourself grace. You can't be perfect. No one is perfect. Only God. Only God is
great.
perfect.
I,
And just learning that if you fail, you're not a failure.
I
It's
love
really big.
that. If you fail, you're not a failure. Because for these two branches of students, the first generation whose parents are immigrants, and then the international students, failure is shame, is
Shame.
associated with shame, as
Yeah,
opposed to what can I learn from this? Yes, this probably
absolutely.
just wasn't right for me. Well, how can I
Absolutely.
start again? So I love what you said,
Hmm.
that failure is not the end of the world. It may be the beginning of it may be a discovery period, and
Absolutely.
embrace that.
Absolutely.
So, Carol, tell my listeners where they can contact you, because I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been educational to me, and I'm sure to a lot of the listeners as well, especially coming from two angles. One, you are a first generation American. Secondly, you've lived in different parts of the United States. You were born in
Mhm.
Brooklyn, you moved to New Jersey, and then at the age of 13, moved to North Carolina, where it was a completely different experience. And, that I know impacted your outlook. But when you went to University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, you realize that all those experiences were worthwhile. They impacted you in ways.
Absolutely.
You brought something to the campus. So,
Absolutely.
tell us about where they can find you and learn more about your business and all the things you're doing, because you're doing. I like the work you're doing. It's unique. At least from what I'm hearing, it's different from what I've ever experienced or heard people talk about for college prep.
Yes, absolutely. And I am so grateful to have had a chance to talk with you. Like I said, I'm a very proud first generation American. My parents are from Sierra Leone. We're Creole, so there's a whole nother conversation that we could have gotten into with the colonization and how
Yes.
that impacted us and
Hmm.
all of that. And so I would love to continue to have this conversation with your listeners. You can find me on my website, www.carolbendavies.com. I'm on social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, with my name, Carol Ben-Davies. Um, I would love to have a coffee chat with you, and I'm sure we can maybe put the link somewhere where you can find that and get on a call with me where I can hear what your challenges are in supporting your college bound child and seeing how I can assist them. I do believe I bring a very unique take to college preparation. I don't believe that it's all about just the testing and the essays and, you know, sort of positioning your child for a particular application process. I really believe it's helping to strengthen a child, helping them to understand who they are, helping them to find the right career path for them, helping them to be strategic when they get to campus. So they're taking advantage of resources and opportunities and internships. So when they graduate, they can really be in a position for the types of jobs that they hope for and deserve. And so I look forward to having that conversation. I help students who are as young as middle school all the way to students who are in college. And I have my niece, not my niece, my cousin, actually a recent college graduate, and she and I were having a conversation about the real world and how that transition was has been difficult for her and how we don't prepare college students for this new life, this new independence. So it's like all these different transitions that's really important, and we just kind of expect it's just going to happen. There's a little bit there's a lot of opportunities that I'm excited that I am able to provide those in.
I absolutely love it, especially as there's one thing that just jumped out, that you help prepare students from middle school when they graduate from college. That I haven't heard.
Yes, yes. I am here preparing students for college and life.
And life.
That's the difference between me and anyone else that's out there. I don't just focus on the college piece because that is one important aspect, but much more is how we positioning them for the life that they deserve so they can thrive, not merely survive.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And to my amazing listeners, if you just enjoyed listening to Carol Ben-Davies, please head over to Apple Podcasts or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere that you listen to podcasts and click subscribe. And if you are an immigrant woman or the child of an immigrant woman from the Caribbean or Africa, and you found these ladies' stories and their professions interesting, please let us know in your reviews. And last but not least, if you'd like to be a guest on my show, Chatting with the Experts, please head over to www.chattingwiththeexperts.com/. Contact us and let's talk. I'd love to hear your own experience. Thank you so much, Carol. You are an amazing woman. I said that like 5 times and I mean it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate chatting. Thank you. Appreciate it.